32% of Canadians between the ages of 45 and 64 have nothing saved for retirement. 53% of Canadians don't know if they have enough saved for their retirement. And 73% of Canadians are stressed out about outliving their retirement funds. That's a major issue. How much do you need to retire? It's a question that a lot of you don't have the answer to, and the answer for most of you is actually completely different. And we're going to look at different options, different ways to look at this number as we go through this video. I'm also going to share our financial planning software and break down 3 completely different scenarios to show you how different scenarios, how different people can come to an end result with a different number based on their goals. So let's get a bit of a backbone for this topic, and that's that 73% of you are worried about running out of money. And that's where I always say that laddered income strategy that we talk about, the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go phase of retirement. It's really important to create a plan that has this. It shows you how much money you can spend early with the peace of mind knowing that you won't run out later on. Where, hey, I can go spend $60,000 a year now, and I'll still have my 48 I need later on in life. And you can go spend money. I will say this, the number one issue most retirees have in the world, not just in Canada, in the world, is that they don't spend enough, especially in the first 2 to 3 years of retirement. They hold their money tight, they're uncertain if they can spend, they're worried about, the economy. It's a psychological shift from collecting a paycheck to spending your own money. And so having a proper plan, knowing how much you need, knowing how to take it out, all of this encompasses your retirement cash flow plan that you need to make sure you have in place. So what are ways to know how much you actually need? And again, we did a feedback video on this a while ago, but there were some stats that came out not too long ago that said you need $1.7 million to retire here in Canada. Again, there's going to be some of you that need that much money. You just have a high burn rate. You're spending a lot of money. We do financial plans for Canadians day in and day out here. We have people asking anywhere from $1,800 a month up to $15,000 plus a month. So there's a wide range. Now, most of you are on the lower end. There's very few of you are on the higher end. But of course, if you're spending $15,000 a month, you're going to need a lot of money, or you have really good pensions, or there's something in place to support that lifestyle. For the majority of you, for a single person, you're probably going to need about $3,000 to $5,000. For a couple, $4,000 to $6,000. That's typically the range you're going to need. So how much kind of a lump sum are you going to need? Well, let's kind of break it down and let's create a couple scenarios off of this. So let's say you have an individual that is retiring at 60 and they plan to live till 90 and they need about $3,000 a month. Well, if they take their CPP and OAS, let's say those add up to about $1,500, they need another $1,500. So there's a couple ways you can do this. 2 popular methods. The first one is the 4% rule. So if we look at the 4% rule, it says that if you take 4% of your portfolio out every single year and increase it with inflation over time, it should last the life expectancy of your plan, 25 to 30 years. Now, again, this is a general term. So if we take this client, they needed $3,000, they had $1,500 coming in from CPP and OS, they need another $1,500 per month or $18,000 a year. So if we divide that by 4%, we're looking at $450,000. So this person, this individual, if they said, look, I need to draw about $1,500 every month, $18,000 a year, needs to last for a lifetime. If they followed the 4% rule, they would say, well, I need $450,000 to retire. The other rule of thumb would be the 25 times rule, meaning that whatever you need on an annual basis, times it by 25, and that should give you enough money. Hopefully that money is invested in a balanced fund or investment that's getting a bit of a return. And it basically says whatever you need, because the money's invested, it should last beyond the 25 years, grow with time over inflation. Again, a very simple way to look at it. And if we looked at the same scenario, it works out that if we took that $18,000 needed on an annual basis, times it by 25, we come out with the same $450,000. So if this client looked at it and said, look, I'm looking at a 4% rule or the 25 times rule, they're going to come out with the same number. So it is a good guide stick. Again, it's not perfect, but it gives you a general idea. So if you work backwards to say, look, when I retire, I need X. Here's the income I have in place. Maybe you have CPP, OAS, maybe you have a small work pension plan or something there that's providing some income to you. Maybe it's a bit of a part-time job as well. How much difference do you need? And then you can either use the 4% rule or the 25 times rule to get a bit of a ballpark to understand like how much you need. But again, very high level and in general terms. Let's kind of wind it down a bit closer. When we look at and talk about how much you need for retirement, the first thing you need to look at is your expenses. How much are you actually spending? Now, a general rule for a lot of people is 70% of what they're spending pre-retirement. I typically see, and I would encourage you to budget a little bit more than that. 80-85% is probably more general to what we see, especially to enjoy that go-go phase of retirement. It might drop off to 70 in the slow go, and then beyond that in the no-go phase of retirement. But definitely try and bump yourself up to that 80-85% of what you're spending pre-retirement. That's going to give you a nicer transition into retirement and then through the rest of your retirement going forward. Again, that can ladder down. But if you drop from 100 to 70, you're going to feel it. Now, you can say, well, I'm not going to have a lot of these extra costs and travel and you driving to work and all this. 30% is a big chunk. So, for a lot of you, when you hit retirement too, you may not have a lot of mortgage or debt left. So it's just spending. To cut your spending by 30%, it's a big drop. I want you to cut it by 15, maybe 20%. So target 80-85% of what you're currently spending. Now, your response might be, but Adam, I don't do a budget. Like I'm 50, 60 years old. Budgets are for 20, 30-year-olds. I get it. I would say majority of our clients don't run a budget. If you have no clue what you're spending, definitely do a budget. And it's not about like doing a budget and spending less and all that. It's just figuring out like how much are you actually spending. And again, you can kind of work forward with that. You can go back onto bank statements and whatnot if you kind of pay everything through credit card and bank and not through cash. So figure out what you're spending. From there, you can kind of work backwards to say, okay, well, I need $60,000 a year. And again, jump back to that 4% or the 25 times rule to get a general idea. But again, to figure out what you need for retirement, you need to figure out what you're spending. And like I said, there can be a big range on this. And I have a lot of people that phone me and say, Adam, I have $800,000, am I okay to retire? And the answer is, I have no idea. I need way more data than that. How much are you spending? How much other pensions and incomes do you have? There's more kind of buckets that come into the plan that play all together to make sure you have enough. So someone with $1 million might not even be close to having enough, where someone else with 400,000 might have more than they need. And so that's why this answer to this question is very specific to you. And so you need to go through these steps on your own and then with your financial planner to get the nitty-gritty out of it. The other big piece of how much you need when you retire is you figured out, okay, I need to spend X. So that's my burn rate. But on the other side is how much risk are you willing to take? How much do you expect investment return? And I know a lot of you are sitting there saying, inflation's been high, so I'm going to need more money, but I can get, 5-6% on my GIC or high interest savings account now. Don't expect this forever and don't expect this forever. Inflation's already cooling off, and that 5.5% GIC is not going to be here for long. So that's going to cool off as well. So figure out what you're comfortable risk-wise, what that average rate of return should be. That has to play into the overall amount. Again, when you run a future value calculator, you'll see that if you put in 3% versus 5%, it's going to give you a very different number. And as that number gets higher, it's going to skew even more. So make sure you understand how much risk you're willing to take, what your risk criteria is now. Is it going to change heading into retirement? How are you going to generate cash flow off of your investments? All of these matter into how much you need for retirement. So let's jump into a few scenarios here. The first one is an individual. She's turned 64 next year. She plans to retire at age 65. Now, a few things for her. She has income coming in, a small amount of income of GIS planned for age 65. And her assets will be on her RSP 50,000 and TFSA 50,000. So someone that hasn't saved a lot, she's looking to retire, she'll be collecting GIS. How can we go about planning for her? I will also highlight for her government benefits, CPP at 65 is about 60% of max, and OAS will be 100% of max at age 65 as well. So this client's come to us and asked, how much will I have? Based on what I've saved up, if I retire in just over a year from now, how much will I have? So we go into sustainable spending, meaning that everything that she has, the 50,000, the GIS, CPP, OAS, she'll have about $27,000 a year. And so that is her income. Now, she said to us she wants a bit closer to 30. Like, how can she get there? How much more would she need? There's a bit of an opportunity she has. She could maybe get a little bit of money. So what we want to do is say, well, if you needed 30,000, and we're just going to flatline this all the way down to age 90. We won't ladder it for the scenario. But then if I run that, we're going to have a shortfall. If I scroll down, you can see the pink coming in. So what we want to do is say, like, how much required lump sum? how much money would she need to dump into her savings today to get that magical number to get up to $30,000 per year? And you can see she needs a good chunk of change, $68,000. So if we added in $68,000, which obviously is a big chunk of change for someone like this, not working and whatnot, but again, she has a bit of inheritance, and she's wondering, like, if that inheritance comes in, if it was enough, could I retire? Could I get $30,000? And the answer back to her would be, you'd have about $68,000. Now, we'd probably wipe out the RSP because she's got no income. Depends on how everything comes in. But again, in this case scenario, she was a bit short at $26,000. We're able to kind of up it to say, hey, if you had a lump sum, how much would it need to be? $68,000. Then we can run $30,000 all the way down. Again, we could ladder this down maybe, if she could live off $25,000 later and copy that down. You can kind of play with this. And this is why I show you guys this scenario and this software, is to say, this is what you need to be doing with your financial planner. Run these things. Make sure you understand what you can afford. So if we scaled it back to $25,000 instead of lump sum, now there's less. So we only need a lump sum of $10,000. Much less, much more feasible. So I can say, look, yeah, we can get to $30,000, and then kind of in that slow go stage of retirement, we're just going to pull back to 25 and live off that. So about about $2,000 a month after tax, and they were fine with that. We have a lot of retired clients in their 70s, 80s, living off well under $2,000 a month. It's very feasible, even in today's age. So if you're watching this and uncertain about that, it is possible. Let's look at scenario number 2. This is a 60-year-old client. They've saved up a little bit of assets. They do have income coming in. So Mr. YouTube here has $60,000. Mrs. YouTube just does some work on the side and gets about $10,000 a year. Their assets-wise, she's been able to save $50,000 RSP and $50,000 to a TFSA. Mr. YouTube saved up $100,000 to his RSP, and again, $50,000 to TFSA. In the government benefits section, 80% for him. And on her side, we've cut it back to 40% for her for CPP. So if we go into the plan, again, this client, if we run it a few more years, they have some employment, she's got some employment, he does as well. We're assuming no savings at this point. And then we're wondering, like, if we retire at 65, how much money will we have? And so again, we go in here and go sustainable spending. Based on what you have, let it grow for 5 more years, retire with no extra savings, they're going to have about $51,000 per year. They're happy with this, but they'd like to get about to $55,000. So what if we scaled this up now? So if we said, look, let's go $55,000 and let's copy that down to 75. At 75, then we're going to draw it back to a bit lower. We're going to go back to about $48,000. And if we do that and copy that down to 90 and run the scenario, let's see if there's a shortfall. Let's see if this client will have enough. And if there's any red, and there is at the very end. So there's not a lot of red. So then I'd say, you know what, over the next 5 years of work, let's just see what you have to save on an annual basis. So the required savings, not a lump sum, but just an annual savings. They're looking at about $1,600 per year combined to get to this $55,000 and $48,000. Enjoy a much better life. So they said, you know what, we're going to buckle down, we're going to save it, and we're going to be in a better position so that when we hit retirement, we're going to have the money that we want. We're willing to sacrifice a little bit now to enjoy more later on. And again, you can see they're enjoying about $55,000 now based on their current income, taxes, savings, all that. And then they'll have about $55,000. So their lifestyle won't change a whole lot when they hit retirement in this scenario, which I really like. Again, 80-85% is good. If you can keep it near 100 for that first little bit, enjoy retirement that much more. The third and final scenario, a little bit different. Mr. YouTube has 100,000 RSP, 75,000 TFSA. Mrs. has 175 as well. They have incomes. Mrs. YouTube has 50,000 and Mr. YouTube has 50,000 well. So a bit more income, a bit more assets built up. As far as their government benefits, again, this is a big piece that goes into it. 60,000 for Mr. YouTube, or 60%, and 60% for her as well. So a bit skewed back on the CPP. Now again, same concept here. They're working for a little bit longer. They're wondering, like, what position are we in? And this is why I encourage you to look at your retirement plan 5 to 10 years before retirement and give you this picture of, am I on track? What do I need to save to get to where I want to be? So for them, they're retiring at 65. If we run a sustainability, we'll see they're at about 56,000. They like it, but again, they want to be closer to that 60,000 mark. So, they're able to save and they're willing to save. So if we said Well, let's actually go in here and change this. Instead of 56,000, let's go up to 60,000, and they want that for right through retirement. So we're going to copy that all the way down. So they need a lot more money. We know that. How much more money are they going to need? Let's see. So once we run this, we'll go into recommendations, and what we want to do is say required savings, which is how much do they need to save annually to get to their savings goals and have 60,000. So they need to save about $12,000 a year or about $1,000 a month. So if we click apply and run here, what I want to look at is this. So they have about $67,000, $68,000 a year in today's dollars to live off of, and then 60 when they hit retirement. So again, they're still enjoying it, having a bit more income now versus retirement. I don't mind this. So as we carved out some retirement savings for the client, they're still scaling back when they hit retirement. So it's a nice lifestyle adjustment. And for a lot of you, this last scenario is exactly what you need to do. You need to kind of look at the last 5 years leading up to retirement, and you may need to change a few things. Not that you completely pull back from everything that you're doing, but with a little bit of extra savings go a long ways for retirement. Again, you don't want to go from an income up here to way down here because you didn't save enough for retirement. Scale back a little bit here so you can bump up a little bit here. Maybe it's traveling less, eating out less, whatever it is. Everyone's got their crutch that's eating into their budget. So figure out what your crutch is. What's kind of eating away at your budget, or what's on your budget line that you could carve back a little bit and save for future you, for retirement you. So while a lot of you ramp up for retirement, the stress of do I have enough? Am I going to run out of money? All of this, these are questions that can be answered with a financial planner. If you don't have a financial planner, make sure you talk to a financial planner. You can go to the FP Canada website. We'll link that below. You can find a financial planner in your area or reach out to our office. We service Canadians right across the country. We have staff pretty much right across the country as well. We'd love to help you out and put a plan together to answer those fears. I always say to clients, our job as a financial planner and putting a plan together for you is to answer all those questions and concerns that keep you up at night in the back of your head. Let's get those out. Let's put them on paper. Let's put the data in the system and see how it works out and get you back on track and take those fears away from you. Knowing how much you need for retirement, there's an answer out there for you. A lot of you wait too late. Maybe you don't have enough. Maybe you have too much. If you can kind of plan this out 5 years plus or minus before retirement, it's going to give you a bit of runway to make sure you're on track for retirement. So while there's articles out there spouting off that you need 1.7 million, look, that's for the 1%. The majority of you, if you have probably between $400,000 and $800,000, you can live a nice, modest retirement, enjoy life. Depends where you live, obviously. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, these places are much more expensive. But again, you don't need millions and millions of dollars to enjoy a nice retirement. We have lots of clients that live off $500,000 plus or minus $1,000 in retirement along with their CPP and OAS, and have a wonderful retirement, are able to travel, have time with family, whatever it is that their hobbies are. So don't stress out about this number of 1.7 million or whatever else you're reading out there on the internet until you've actually broken down your numbers. So again, reach out to our office. We're happy to help you, or find a financial planner that you can work with if you're not already. Thanks for joining us in this video, and we'll see you in the next one.